Welcome to the latest episode of QA Bytes. This is the third and final episode in the Getting Real with Test Automation series. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about identifying ways to apply automation to our testing activities. I believe that's an important way to phrase it versus just saying test automation. As I talked about in the last episode, we aren't automating the testing. There's a very timely post recently from the friendly tester, aka Richard Bradshaw, about redefining test automation as automation in testing. I think that's the perfect way to phrase it. It naturally invites people to open their minds about automation in testing. After this post, I'm going to try to use Richard's definition exclusively. If nothing else, it will cause others to pause and think about why they heard something different than test automation. In the last episode, I discussed some foundational thought processes we can adopt to help us change our perspective about automation and testing. Once you've changed your thought processes and opened up your mind, the next step is to broaden your definition of what you think test automation is. One of the best ways I've found to do that is to think about all the activities you do related to software testing. You'll quickly see that you do lots of things that have nothing at all to do with executing actions against a UI, which is what many of us generally equate to the term test automation. Here's a few things that I put together. These things can all be automated in one way or another. Can we use a GUI automation tool like UFT or Selenium to automate all of these things? No, or at least we can agree that they wouldn't be the most effective or efficient way to automate most of these activities. So by broadening our definition and thinking more generally about test automation, we can not only identify more opportunities to benefit from automation, but it will allow us to perform that automation in a way that gives us the most benefit, not just the way that's most comfortable for us. So if we think about the list of things that we do as part of testing beyond just executing test cases, we're likely to come up with a relatively long list of activities, as we just saw. So let's look at how we can use that list as a starting point to identify opportunities to benefit from automation. The first and probably most difficult thing we need to do is suppress our urge to immediately start solving a problem using our current body of experience and knowledge. That experience and knowledge is very important and certainly very valuable, but it can also be self-limiting if we put blinders on and only view the world from that perspective. If we call that experience and knowledge our hammer, then we need to resist the urge to see every potential automation opportunity only as a nail. Next, we need to think about the frequency, effort, time, and duration associated with all the activities that we perform as part of these testing-related activities. We want to identify those activities that are costing us most in terms of those metrics. This doesn't have to be a large, intensive research project. Most of the data is probably right there in front of you. You just need to capture it. You also want to look at value-add activities that you aren't doing, but could or should be performing if you had more time or more resource bandwidth. And this is an often overlooked benefit to automation. I find that there's often a lot of high-priority activity that isn't performed because there just isn't enough time. So lower priority activities that just happen to be less time and effort intensive are being performed instead. Next, take all those opportunities and rank them in terms of impact to your organizations. Typically, that's the total effort expended on the activity over some period of time. This can serve as your initial priority list. It certainly may change once you start to investigate each of the opportunities more, but that's okay. We're not trying to solve the problem yet. We still have our hammer locked in our toolbox. Again, you're likely to have a decent list of opportunities. I'm not naive enough to think that organizations can stop what they're doing completely and investigate a long list of automation opportunities. However, if you're serious about wanting the benefits of automation, you should be able to start with the highest priority and work your way down. So now you have a list of potential opportunities to apply automation. But before we take our hammer out of the toolbox and start pounding, it would probably behoove most of us if we open up our definition of test automation tools as well. When many of us think of test automation tools, we think about one of the commercial or open source GUI automation tools. The problem with that way of thinking is that it leads us back to a very narrow view of automation, which is automatically performing UI level actions in order to meet whatever our test objectives might be. This then leads us to create these large, unwieldy, extremely difficult to maintain UI level automated test suites. And we end up spending enormous amounts of time, energy, and money doing the same thing over and over again, with very often little to show for it. So let's look at how we might start thinking more broadly about test automation tools. I think of a test automation tool as anything we can use or build to make a testing-related activity more efficient or effective. And certainly that would include GUI automation tools, but there are lots of other tools and utilities that can help make your testing life better. Thank you again for tuning into QA Bytes. Be sure to check back for future blog series for discussions on all things QA and testing.